On the floating council station of Talaris, the air was thick with tension. Aliens of all shapes and sizes gathered in the circular chamber, their voices rising and falling like waves. Some had long tentacles that twitched nervously, while others had wings folded tightly against their backs. The hum of machinery mixed with heated conversation, and a soft red light pulsed from the ceiling, marking the council's official session. "Humans are unpredictable," whispered a small gray-skinned delegate to her companion. Her voice was barely audible over the general chatter. "They always win when cornered." Across the chamber, Admiral Clara stood silently on the observation platform, her posture perfect, her calm presence a sharp contrast to the chaos around her. Her uniform was simple, dark blue, with the insignia of Earth's interstellar command on her shoulder. Yet something about her, an air of quiet authority, the way she scanned the room without moving her head, made even the most seasoned alien diplomats glance nervously in her direction. Ethan, her second-in-command, stood just behind her. He noticed the small flinches and sideways glances that Clara drew. He had seen it before during smaller diplomatic missions, but the Council of Talaris was different. This chamber held representatives from hundreds of star systems, some of whom had fought humanity in the last galactic war. Most still bore scars, both visible and hidden, and the memory of human determination had not faded. "Are they really so dangerous?" whispered one delegate with a voice like chimes. She was small and pale, with long eyes that shimmered faintly in the dim light. "I mean, they are just humans. Not even half our size." Her companion leaned closer. "Size doesn't matter. You don't understand. They think differently. They adapt. They survive. They turn the impossible into the inevitable." Clara's eyes, sharp and steady, swept across the chamber. She did not interrupt. She never needed to. Her silence was a statement on its own. Even the most aggressive speakers found themselves pausing when she looked at them. Something in the human way of being made others uneasy. The debate grew louder. Voices rose over one another as the alien delegates argued about strategy, alliances, and resources. Some wanted to push against human influence in the outer rim sectors, others wanted to maintain peace. But beneath every word there was fear. Even the boldest voices carried the unspoken truth. Humans had a way of surprising everyone, and that surprise often ended badly for those who underestimated them. Ethan leaned toward Clara. "Do you think they remember?" he asked quietly. "Do they remember what happened in the war?" Clara did not look at him immediately. Her gaze stayed fixed on the council floor. "Some of them do," she said finally. "Some of them fear it. And the rest will soon learn." She moved her hand slightly, a small gesture that signaled for silence. The room gradually quieted, the delegates noticing the human authority in action. Clara's calm was not arrogance, it was confidence. She did not need to shout because humans had a reputation that spoke louder than words. The council historian, a tall figure with scales that shimmered like silver, cleared his throat. "We must remember," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber, "the events of the last galactic war. Humanity was pushed to the brink, and yet they emerged victorious. Their fleets were smaller, their technology less advanced than ours at the time. But they adapted. They struck where we least expected. They survived against impossible odds." A murmur ran through the room. Some delegates whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Others looked at Clara, almost as if seeking reassurance or confirmation. Clara said nothing, letting the stories do the work. Ethan watched closely. The humans had a saying, "Actions speak louder than words." And here in the council chamber it was true. The mere presence of Clara, a single human leader, reminded the galaxy why no one dared provoke humanity. One of the younger delegates, a bright-eyed male with antennae quivering nervously, raised his voice. "But why are they still here? The war ended years ago. Surely we are stronger now." Clara finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Strength is measured not only in fleets and weapons," she said. "It is measured in resolve, in adaptability, in the willingness to act when it matters most. Humanity has survived against far greater odds than you imagine, and we will continue to do so." The chamber fell silent. Even those who had planned to speak next paused, as if weighing their words against the weight of Clara's presence. The gray-skinned delegate from earlier shook her head. "It still doesn't make sense," she whispered to her companion. "How can they be so relentless?" "They fight for something we cannot fully understand," her companion replied. "They fight for their people, their home, and their freedom. That gives them a strength we do not have." Clara's gaze shifted to a large viewport behind her, revealing the black expanse of space. Stars glittered like distant fires, and the silence of the void contrasted sharply with the tension in the council. For humans, space was not only a battlefield but a home to protect. And that, perhaps, made all the difference. Ethan noticed her expression soften slightly. She was thinking of the past, the battles fought in distant systems, the sacrifices made by countless humans to survive. They had been cornered many times, and each time they had risen stronger. That history was not forgotten, and it was why the galaxy now hesitated before testing them. A delegation from the Orion sector spoke up, their tone carefully polite. "Admiral Clara, we respect your presence, but some of us worry about human intervention in our territories. Are we to understand that any provocation will be met with retaliation?" Clara's lips curved into a faint, controlled smile. "We do not seek war. But we will act to defend ourselves and our allies. That is all any species can expect from another. Understand this, humanity does not need to threaten to be respected. Our history does that for us." The room seemed to shrink slightly under her words. Fear and respect intertwined in a way that humans had learned to use long ago. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably, others whispered among themselves, and a few simply stared, trying to comprehend the quiet power of a human presence. As the session continued, Clara remained calm and silent. She observed the debates, noting the alliances forming and the subtle undercurrents of distrust. Humanity's reputation alone shaped conversations, decisions, and strategies. In the last galactic war, humans had turned defeat into victory through cunning, speed, and adaptability. Now that reputation. The mining fields of Gamma 9 stretched for miles, a harsh, rocky landscape bathed in the faint orange glow of its sun. Massive drills and machines dotted the horizon, their engines humming steadily as they processed the mineral-rich soil. Human engineers moved efficiently between the equipment, checking readings, repairing machinery, and ensuring that the automated systems ran without fault. For humans, this was just another day of work. For others, it was an opportunity. A small alien crew approached from the northern ridge. They were confident, maybe even reckless. The leader, a tall, green-skinned male with thin, flexible limbs, waved a hand and spoke in a language none of the humans could understand. He believed humans were weak. He had heard stories of their small fleets, their simple ships, and he thought taking a few humans hostage would be easy. It would be a message to the galaxy, a show of strength, and perhaps a profitable one. They moved carefully through the shadows, avoiding the larger human patrol drones. Their plan was simple: capture, intimidate, and leave before any human reinforcements arrived. The aliens were armed with weapons designed to stun, to trap, and to immobilize quickly. They did not expect resistance, or at least, any resistance that could match their skill. Commander Liam watched from the command module perched atop a nearby hill. He noticed unusual readings on the scanners, shifts in motion and energy signatures that did not match any routine human operation. His eyes narrowed as he studied the patterns. Something was off. Humans on Gamma 9 rarely had unexpected visitors. And if there were intruders, they would not leave unchallenged. He tapped a small panel on the console. "All units stand by. Engage only on my order," he said calmly, his voice steady but firm. The engineers working nearby glanced at him with trust. They knew his orders were precise, and following them without question was standard procedure. Below, the alien crew crept closer to the terraforming equipment, their confidence growing with each step. They laughed softly among themselves, certain of their easy victory. One of them, younger than the rest, adjusted a strange, glowing device on his arm, preparing to disable the human defenses. The team was unaware that Liam had already anticipated their moves, calculated every step, and positioned his units to respond. Suddenly, a quiet hum filled the air, almost too soft to notice. The ground vibrated slightly as small drones, camouflaged against the orange soil, began to move into position. They were invisible to the naked eye, but their sensors locked onto the aliens immediately. Liam observed from above, a faint smile touching his lips. He spoke once, clearly and decisively, "Now." The response was immediate. Automated nets shot from the ground, capturing the intruders in moments. Energy fields immobilized them, and drones hovered above, preventing any attempt to escape. The aliens struggled, but their weapons were useless against the coordinated human defenses. Liam's units moved with silent precision, disarming the trespassers one by one. Despite their initial confidence, the aliens realized too late that they had underestimated the humans. Every step they had planned was already countered, every escape route blocked. Liam did not hesitate. He knew the importance of sending a clear message. Humanity had been pushed to the edge too many times, and the galaxy needed to understand that provoking them came with consequences. Minutes passed, but to the trespassers, it felt like hours. They were completely surrounded, unable to communicate with the outside, and every attempt to resist was met with a calculated response. Liam watched, noting the fear growing in their eyes. It was not personal, he reminded himself. It was a demonstration. Survival in this case depended on acknowledging human resolve, and they had chosen poorly. The leader of the alien crew made a final desperate attempt to negotiate. He activated a small translator device, forcing out a plea in broken common language. We did not mean to offend humans. Liam's response was calm, measured, and unyielding. Offense is not the issue. Trespasses. Choice is not offered in these situations. The human drones advanced, and the aliens' weapons were rendered useless in moments. Liam ensured the process was efficient. No human lives were risked, no mistakes allowed. By the end of the confrontation, the intruders were disarmed, captured, and contained. A silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of the machinery and the low vibrations of the terraforming equipment. Liam looked over the scene. The aliens were gone in terms of threat, but there was one final task. He tapped a panel on his wrist console, sending a single message across all nearby systems. It read simply, "Do not provoke humanity." No threats, no boasts, just a clear statement of intent. The galaxy needed to understand that humans were not reckless, but they were not to be underestimated either. Even minor skirmishes like this became lessons in human efficiency. The story would spread quickly, whispered in distant starports and council chambers, exaggerating as stories often do. The humans had acted with precision, intelligence, and restraint, yet the result was undeniable. Any alien considering similar action would hesitate. As Liam returned to the command module, he glanced at the terraforming machinery. Everything was operational, untouched by the intrusion, a silent testament to human discipline. Nearby engineers continued their work as if nothing had happened. For them, these incidents were part of life in a galaxy that often did not respect boundaries until taught otherwise. Commander Liam reviewed the records. Energy readings, drone performance, alien behavior, all analyzed and logged. In the human way, every detail mattered and every lesson was noted. One day this information might prevent another misunderstanding, or it might be used to plan future defenses. Either way, humanity's reputation grew stronger with each calculated action. He thought briefly of the last galactic war. Humans had been cornered then too, facing enemies far larger, better equipped, and more numerous. Yet through ingenuity, courage, and discipline they had survived. That history was not just memory, it was warning. The galaxy had not forgotten, and Liam made sure no one present in Gamma 9 would forget either. The alien crew, though small, had tested human resolve and lost completely. It would not be the last time the galaxy witnessed humans at work, but it was a clear example of what happened when someone underestimated them. The lesson was simple. Humans were patient, humans were smart, and humans acted decisively when provoked. As the sun of Gamma 9 dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the rocky fields, Liam stood atop the command hill and observed the quiet, organized activity of his team. In the distance, automated lights flickered on, illuminating the vast fields of machinery, as if signaling to the universe itself. Humanity was present, aware, and prepared. No words needed to be spoken beyond the single, simple message. The galaxy would remember it. No species would risk testing human patience again. The drones returned to their stations, the engineers continued their tasks, and Liam allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had not started a war, had not sought conflict, but it had sent a clear warning. Respect was earned, boundaries were enforced, and no trespass would ever go unnoticed again. Gamma 9 fell into silence, the stars above shining as witnesses to human efficiency. Somewhere in the galaxy, stories would begin to spread, whispers of human capability, of small forces achieving great results, and of the deadly precision that made no alien fleet dare challenge them lightly. For Commander Liam, this was just another day. For the rest of the galaxy, it was a warning that would not be ignored. Humanity had spoken, and the message was unmistakable. Do not provoke humanity. The black market station of Vernon drifted silently in the dark reaches of space. Its twisted metal corridors and buzzing lights gave it a feeling of life, even in the emptiness around it. Ships docked in crooked bays, traders bargained in secret, and rumors spread like wildfire from corner to corner. News traveled faster than light here, not through formal channels but through whispers, hisses, and coded messages. They adapt to anything, A small, orange-scaled alien muttered to his companion, a creature with long, flexible limbs and two large black eyes. They fight like nothing else. You cannot plan for them. His companion snorted, a sound that almost resembled laughter. Stories grow faster than reality, he said. Humans are clever, yes, but no species is invincible. These are just tales. But the orange-scaled alien shook his head. You don't understand. They do not just fight. They learn. They watch. They turn our tricks against us. And every story you hear, it is true even if you think it is exaggeration. Elsewhere in the station, a young alien diplomat named Sora moved carefully through the crowded corridors. She had pale, smooth skin, eyes that shimmered faintly blue, and a cautious way of speaking that made others listen. Sora had tried many times to warn her peers about humanity. She had seen the reports, the encounters, the victories humans had quietly won in distant systems. They are not like any species we have known, she said to a group of young diplomats in a narrow chamber. They think differently. They adapt quickly. They survive when all seems lost. If we provoke them even in small ways, the consequences are worse than you can imagine. Her words were met with laughter. You worry too much, one said, waving a long, segmented arm. Humans are small. Their fleets are not huge. They are clever, yes, but so is every species here. Do not overstate their threat. Sora frowned. She had hoped to reach them, to make them understand the danger that came with underestimating humanity. She could feel it in her bones, in the stories she had studied. Humans were patient, intelligent, and unpredictable. Every encounter she had seen in the reports ended the same way. Humans adapt, survive, and leave a clear message behind. A sudden alert on her communicator drew her attention. A report flashed across the screen. Another human fleet had neutralized a small alien squadron far from Earth. The aliens had thought themselves safe, operating in a remote sector with no human presence. Yet humans had found them, struck decisively, and left only silence in their wake. Sora's blue eyes widened. She knew this would change everything. The diplomats she had warned would no longer laugh. They would remember. She moved quickly to a nearby communications hub, tapping into the station's data lines to broadcast the news in a subtle way, enough to reach the networks that connected traders, explorers, and minor military units. Within minutes, the rumor began to spread. Across multiple star systems, whispers traveled faster than official reports ever could. They found them, and destroyed them? A voice asked on a distant relay channel. Yes, another replied, almost in awe. And not with a large fleet. They were small in number, precise, unstoppable. It seems nothing can surprise them. Nothing can stop them when they decide to act. The whispers carried fear and, in some hearts, a strange kind of admiration. Humans had a reputation now, one that had grown with each small skirmish, each calculated victory. It was no longer about the size of their forces. It was about how they fought, how they adapted, and how their cunning always seemed to exceed expectation. On the station, Sora observed the reactions around her. Merchants stopped their bargaining mid-sentence. Traders leaned closer to hear the whispers, and even minor security officers paused to listen. News of human efficiency traveled fast, carried not by prideful announcements but by the quiet certainty of fact. An older diplomat, her scales dull and marked with age, approached Sora. You were right, she said softly. They are unlike any species I have seen. And the galaxy is beginning to understand it. Sora nodded, but she did not smile. It was not pride that filled her, but concern. She knew that humans acted with purpose, not recklessness. They did not start conflicts lightly, but when they did intervene, the results were absolute. Every species that tested them had learned that lesson the hard way. In a hidden bay of the station, an alien trader named Kiro tapped a message into his terminal, sending it out to distant stations. Beware the humans. They adapt, they survive, and they do not forgive mistakes. Stories are true. The message spread, amplified by fear and fascination alike. Whispers became stories, stories became legend. Across the galaxy, humans became something more than just another species. They became a standard of caution, a symbol of unpredictability and resilience. Even among the more skeptical, the word traveled. A fleet commander in a remote system paused during exercises, reviewing reports of human actions in sectors far from Earth. Perhaps we have underestimated them, he said quietly to his officers. Perhaps we should reconsider our plans. Sora watched as the ripple grew. Humans were quiet observers for the most part, patient and precise. But even a small fleet, moving carefully, could leave a mark that echoed across light years. Each encounter told the same story, Humans did not rely on brute force alone. They used intelligence, strategy, and adaptability to achieve results no one expected. Some whispers on Vernon became fearful warnings. Others became stories told to children on distant colonies, tales of human courage and ingenuity. The galaxy had begun to respect the species that had survived the last galactic war, not through luck or overwhelming power, but through cleverness, endurance, and a willingness to act decisively when cornered. In her private quarters, Sora recorded her observations in a small, secure log. "Humans are changing the way the galaxy thinks," she wrote. "Fear is growing alongside admiration. They are not reckless, yet their restraint is stronger than our weapons. No species can risk provoking them without paying a heavy price." She paused, thinking of the miners on Gamma 9, the trespassers who had underestimated human resolve, and the fleet struck far from Earth. Every story reinforced the same lesson: humans were patient, clever, and deadly when necessary. Elsewhere, in a quiet observation room on the station, a group of young alien cadets gathered around a holoscreen showing a tactical simulation of human maneuvers. They had been told to learn from it. They watched as small human units adapted to shifting terrain, as engineers repaired systems under fire, as fleet commanders predicted enemy movements before they happened. Their mouths went dry. Fear and awe mixed in equal measure. "These are just humans," one whispered. "Small, simple creatures. Yet they outthink everyone." "Yes," another said. "And they survive. Always survive." Across Vernon, across neighboring stations and in distant sectors, the whispers continued. Humans were no longer merely a species to trade with, to ignore, or to test. They had become something else: a benchmark, a cautionary tale, and a force to respect. Sora finally allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps now her peers would listen. Perhaps now the galaxy would remember that humans were not ordinary, and that underestimating them could be fatal. The rumors, the stories, and the lessons spread faster than light itself, carried on the network of whispers, hisses, and secret communications. From the black market station of Vernon to the council halls of distant worlds, the same truth traveled everywhere. Humanity adapts, humanity survives, and humanity fights like nothing else in the galaxy. And for those who had yet to face them directly, that knowledge was enough to inspire caution. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Sora had always known. Humans were not to be underestimated. The view from the observation deck of Earth orbit was breathtaking. Blue oceans stretched across the planet below, dotted with white clouds that drifted lazily in the sun's glow. Space beyond was a deep black, broken only by stars that shimmered faintly, and the distant glint of orbiting stations and ships. Clara stood at the edge of the deck, her posture straight, her eyes focused on the reports displayed in holographic panels before her. Liam was beside her, reviewing the same data, his fingers moving quickly over the interface as numbers and images shifted and rotated in the air. "We don't start wars," Clara said, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the soft hum of the station's systems. "We end them when necessary." Liam nodded. He had known Clara for years, had served under her during operations that stretched across dozens of star systems. He understood the weight behind her words. Humans did not seek conflict. They did not strike out of pride or anger. But when provoked, when the safety of their people or systems was threatened, they responded with precision and efficiency that no species could match. Below them, the human fleet at New Geneva was preparing quietly for deployment. Ships of various sizes, from small reconnaissance vessels to massive carriers, were moving with smooth coordination. Engineers checked systems, pilots reviewed flight patterns, and commanders confirmed strategies with careful calculation. There was no rush, no visible tension, only the quiet focus of a species that understood both power and patience. Clara turned to Liam, her expression steady. "Every move they make, every formation, every signal, it is meant to show capability, not aggression. We are not here to threaten. We are here to remind the galaxy that humans are prepared." Liam looked out the viewport as the fleet slowly departed. Their engines glowed faintly against the blackness of space, and the ships moved with silent precision, as if the universe itself had slowed to observe their departure. Even from orbit, the message was clear: humanity was aware, capable, and patient, but not weak. In the nearby council systems and observation points, alien observers noted the fleet's movement. They recorded every detail, from the calculated spacing of ships to the quiet communication signals that flowed between them. There was no display of aggression, no reckless maneuvers, only a controlled demonstration of strategy and coordination. One alien analyst, a tall being with translucent skin and luminous veins, whispered to a colleague, "They are showing restraint. Yet everything they do seems precise. You cannot guess what comes next. The colleague nodded slowly, a hint of fear in their wide eyes. And that is the danger. Humans do not act carelessly. They plan, they adapt, and when they decide to fight, it is decisive. Clara watched the reports of recent skirmishes play out on the holographic panels. There were hundreds of encounters, from small trespasses in remote sectors to minor fleet engagements far from human space. In each case, humans had acted with strategy and efficiency. No unnecessary risks, no wasted force. Just calculated response that neutralized threats and left clear lessons behind. They learn from everything, Liam said quietly. Every encounter, every challenge, it is analyzed, stored, and remembered. That is why they never make the same mistake twice. Clara nodded. It is also why no species dares provoke them unnecessarily. The galaxy has seen the results. Even minor acts of aggression end with humans demonstrating their full capability. And those who do not survive, their stories are told. They become warnings. She tapped a panel, bringing up a simulation of human fleet movements during a recent conflict in the Orion sector. Small human units had moved with perfect coordination, adapting to changes in terrain, responding to enemy tactics before they could react, and achieving objectives without unnecessary loss. Every step had been measured, precise, and controlled. Liam leaned closer to the display. Even when humans have fewer ships, they make up for it with strategy and adaptability. That is why they survive where others would fail. Clara's eyes did not leave the simulation. Survival is only part of it, she said. They also send a message without needing to speak. The galaxy watches, learns, and fears. Fear is enough to prevent conflicts before they even start. As the fleet left orbit, communication channels quietly monitored potential responses from neighboring systems. There were minor alerts, small flurries of movement from alien patrols, but no one dared act aggressively. The humans had shown capability, but without hostility. That was the most powerful part, restraint combined with precision. In a command room aboard one of the carriers, Captain Jonah reviewed sensor readings from the fleet's perimeter. Everything is stable. No interference from local fleets. We are on schedule, he reported. His tone was calm, professional. The humans did not panic even when monitoring unknown movements or unexpected signals. They expected challenges and had prepared for them all. On the observation deck of New Geneva, Clara and Liam continued to watch. They understand the cost of action, Clara said. Every ship, every system, every life, it is valued. And yet they are willing to act decisively when necessary. That combination, no species can gamble against it. Liam nodded. That is why humans are feared even by those who have never faced them directly. Reputation is built on more than victories. It is built on control, discipline, and the certainty that they will respond when needed. Across the galaxy, alien analysts reported similar observations. The movement of the human fleet was studied, simulated, and discussed in secret. Every minor tactic, every strategic decision, every measured action added to the growing legend of human capability. It was a quiet demonstration, yet louder than any declaration of war. Clara turned from the viewport to Liam. They will not strike first. Humans do not act out of impulse or pride. But if provoked, the results are absolute. And the galaxy knows it. In the following days, reports from remote systems confirmed the effect. Trade routes that had previously seen minor skirmishes went undisturbed. Fleets that might have tested human territory held back. Even the boldest aliens hesitated, recalling stories from the last Galactic War and observing the present demonstration of human precision. Back on the observation deck, Clara allowed herself a small moment of quiet satisfaction. It was not pride that filled her, it was understanding. Humans had earned this moment through patience, intelligence, and the careful cultivation of their reputation. They did not need to boast or attack to command respect. Their presence alone was enough to ensure caution and careful consideration from all who knew their capabilities. Liam looked at the departing fleet on the viewport. Do you think they understand it? He asked. Clara's eyes were steady, her expression calm. Some do, some will learn. The important part is that humans will act only when necessary, and no one will want to be the first to provoke them. That is all the galaxy needs to know. Below, in the corridors of New Geneva, humans continued their routine with quiet efficiency. Engineers checked systems, pilots reviewed their flight paths, and commanders monitored communications. There was no fanfare, no display of arrogance. Only a disciplined, deliberate approach to a galaxy that often underestimated them. In far-off systems, alien eyes followed the fleet, recording every movement, analyzing every strategy. The stories would spread. Humans were not reckless, yet their restraint hid immense power. Every minor decision reflected intelligence, every maneuver reflected experience, and every fleet operation reflected careful planning. Clara and Liam remained on the observation deck long after the fleet had passed into deep space. They spoke little, observing the stars and listening to the quiet hum of the station. They did not need to speak. Humans had already sent their message. Precision, strategy, and restraint, combined with the certainty that they would act when necessary, were enough to keep the galaxy cautious. No species would risk provoking humanity. Not because humans sought conflict, but because humans had shown the galaxy that when action was necessary, it was absolute. The stars above reflected silently in Clara's eyes. Humanity's resolve, patience, and precision had become more than reputation. It was protection, deterrence, and legend all at once. And in that quiet, watched only by stars and distant fleets, humans continued to prepare, to adapt, and to wait for the moment when they would act only if provoked. The galaxy had learned, once again, why no one dared challenge humanity lightly. The council chamber of Talaris hummed with quiet tension as alien leaders from hundreds of star systems filed into their seats. The room was enormous, a circular hall that floated in orbit above a gas giant. Light filtered in through transparent panels in the ceiling, casting soft reflections across the polished floors. Each species brought with it a presence, a reputation, and a history of victories and defeats. Yet today, every leader shared the same unspoken thought: humans. Stories of the last galactic war had been retold countless times, each telling carrying the same lesson. Humans survived when they were cornered. Humans adapted when situations seemed impossible. Humans outthought and outmaneuvered every species that dared challenge them. Those who remembered the war spoke quietly, their voices tinged with respect, fear, or both. A gray-skinned delegate adjusted the panel before him, projecting a holographic display of past battles. In Sector 47G, he said, voice low, they were outnumbered 3-1. Every fleet in their path had stronger weapons and faster ships. Yet, they turned the tide, capturing enemy supply lines and isolating opposing commanders. The galaxy remembers that day, and we should too. Other delegates murmured in agreement, their long eyes narrowing as they reflected on the accounts. Some had personally faced humans and lived to tell the tale, while others had only heard the stories from survivors. Either way, the effect was the same. Humans were not a species to test lightly. Clara sat quietly in the observation gallery above the chamber. Her dark uniform contrasted sharply against the soft glow of the council's lights. She did not speak. She did not need to. The presence of a human admiral in the council was enough to silence even the boldest voices. Her calm gaze swept the room, noting the exchanges, the subtle glances of caution, and the respectful distance that alien leaders kept from her. Beside her, Liam observed the council as well, quietly taking notes and monitoring the proceedings. He could see the ripple effect of human actions across generations of leaders. Humans had survived wars, faced overwhelming odds, and yet had emerged stronger each time. Their history was a living warning, and their presence in the room reinforced it. A young diplomat, clearly new to council proceedings, whispered nervously to a nearby elder. Do they really deserve all this caution? We have stronger fleets now. We have more advanced weapons. Why are they still so feared? The elder, whose silver scales gleamed faintly, shook their head slowly. It is not just about fleets or weapons. It is about thought, adaptability, and will. Humans do not act recklessly, but when cornered, they respond with a force and precision that few can match. It is a lesson the galaxy learned during the last war. One does not easily forget it. Clara remained silent, her expression unreadable. She did not need to explain humanity's strength. The evidence spoke for itself. Every skirmish, every fleet deployment, every defensive maneuver executed across countless star systems had reinforced the same lesson. Humans were clever, resourceful, and relentless when necessary. The council historian, a tall being with smooth, reflective skin, stepped forward. He raised a hand for silence. Let us remember, he said, voice resonant, that humans are not reckless. They are not aggressive by nature. They act with purpose, with strategy, and with patience. When provoked, they respond decisively. Those who have faced them have learned this, and those who have not yet encountered them would do well to take note. A ripple of agreement ran through the chamber. Whispers traveled quickly from one end to the other. Some leaders glanced at Clara, acknowledging the truth in the historian's words, while others simply nodded quietly, aware of the stories that had traveled across the galaxy. Sora, the young diplomat who had once tried to warn her peers, stood near the back of the chamber. She observed the proceedings carefully, noting which delegates seemed convinced and which still held traces of doubt. Her pale eyes flicked to Clara, and she allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Finally, perhaps, her warnings had reached the ears that mattered. Clara leaned against the railing of the observation gallery, her gaze moving to the stars beyond the council chamber. Light from distant suns shimmered faintly across the blackness of space, a reminder of the countless systems humans had touched, defended, and observed. Humanity's reach was not driven by conquest alone, but by a steady, patient vigilance that few could comprehend. Liam joined her quietly. "Do you think they understand?" he asked. "All of them?" Clara did not answer immediately. She studied the council below, the subtle body language of leaders, the quiet acknowledgement of human capability, and the stories being retold as warnings. Finally she spoke, her voice calm, measured. "Some understand. Some will never fully understand until it is too late. That is enough. Our reputation is our strongest shield. No species will risk invoking the wrath of the human spirit if they have even a shred of caution." Outside the chamber, communications channels quietly transmitted reports from the council's proceedings to other systems. Across light years, alien commanders and diplomats would receive the news. Humans were respected, feared, and not to be tested lightly. The messages were careful, devoid of exaggeration, but their content spoke volumes. In the quiet of her private quarters later, Clara reviewed the historical accounts of the last galactic war once more. Ships destroyed, fleets cornered, supply lines cut, and outnumbered units achieving impossible victories, all recorded and preserved for future generations. Humans had faced overwhelming threats, adapted to every challenge and emerged victorious, not by sheer numbers or superior technology alone, but by ingenuity, courage, and an unyielding will to survive. The galaxy had remembered, and the galaxy would continue to remember. Every skirmish, every fleet deployment, every human action reinforced the same lesson. Humans were patient, intelligent, and relentless when provoked. Liam entered quietly. "They are beginning to respect us more than they fear us," he said. Clara shook her head slightly. "Respect is a form of fear, Liam. It is caution born from knowledge and observation. Humans have earned it. That is enough." As night fell over Earth's orbit, the city of New Geneva glowed faintly below, lights shimmering in organized patterns across the surface. Humanity had prepared, trained, and endured for centuries to reach this point. They did not need to threaten the galaxy, but they did need to ensure that others understood the consequences of provocation. In distant systems, alien fleets and outposts quietly adjusted patrol patterns, reconsidered strategies, and reviewed intelligence reports. The stories of human cunning and adaptability were no longer whispered rumors. They were studied, analyzed, and respected. The galaxy had learned a lesson that could not be unlearned. Clara finally allowed herself to relax slightly, gazing at the distant stars. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not pride but certainty. Humanity's reputation was now a shield, more effective than any fleet, more enduring than any weapon. The galaxy had been taught that humans survive, adapt, and outthink anyone who challenges them. That understanding alone prevented unnecessary conflicts, preserving countless lives across countless systems. In the council chamber below, alien leaders continued their debates, now tempered with caution. Every decision, every alliance, every movement carried a silent acknowledgement. Humans were different. They were clever, disciplined, and dangerous if provoked, but restrained and deliberate in their actions. That combination made them a force that no species could gamble against lightly. Sora, observing quietly from the back, felt a sense of hope. Perhaps now the galaxy would begin to cooperate more peacefully, understanding that conflict with humanity was a risk too great to take. She watched as delegates slowly returned to their routines, more careful in their words and gestures, subtly honoring the lessons of the last galactic war and the continued vigilance of human fleets. Clara turned to Liam one last time before leaving the observation deck. "We have done what we needed to do. The galaxy understands. Humans have not needed to strike, and likely never will unless absolutely necessary. That is enough to keep us safe." Liam nodded. "It is more than enough. They will think twice before testing us, and that is the strongest deterrent we could ever ask for." Clara's gaze returned to the stars. Beyond the council, beyond the fleets, beyond the distant systems, humanity's reputation had become something greater than any weapon or fleet. It had become a shield of respect, fear, and cautious admiration. The galaxy would remember the lessons of the past, observe the vigilance of the present, and respect the humans for the future. No species would risk provoking them lightly. The human spirit, clever and relentless, was a force that could not be ignored. And as Clara watched the stars, she knew humanity had secured its legacy, not through conquest, but through intelligence, patience, and the certainty that when necessary humans would act, and when they did, no one would stand in their way.